Okay, Chapter 7, Mexico becomes independent. 7 Years' War, sometimes called the French and Indian War, was between Great Britain and France, which are kind of the two main powers in North America at the time. There were lots of other European countries that were also a part of the 7 Years' War, but Britain and France were kind of the two main ones. The other ones were brought on by alliances and different things like that. You see on this map here, this is before the 7 Years' War. Great Britain had the 13 colonies. There's kind of an area here where the Mississippi River is that both sides kind of claimed, and France had this large territory through Canada and all of this. Texas is kind of down here. It's controlled by Spain, and Spain also has Florida. So they're fighting for control of North America. Eventually, Great Britain wins. You can see in this picture they get all of France's North American territory, which is a big chunk of land. And Spain gets Louisiana from France. The British give them Louisiana, and they have that for Florida. Or, I'm sorry, they trade that for Florida to Great Britain. So Great Britain has everything east of the Mississippi River, and now Spain has everything west of the Mississippi River. The French are no longer in North America, so the Spanish don't see them as a threat anymore. So they start to wonder, do we need to have these sports? Or, I'm sorry, not these sports, but these missions and presidios that they had in East Texas. Because the main reason that they had it, yes, they wanted to convert Indians and do all that, but the main reason that they did that was because they thought the French were moving into the territory. Now the French are no longer a threat, and they wonder, do we need to have these things anymore because it's costing us money? So the king selects this guy, Marquez de Rubi, and he sends him to Texas and all this different area of Spain to kind of check over things, see what's going on, and give some suggestions on what they want to do. So Ruby goes to East Texas. He finds that many of the missions and presidios lacked weapons, food, and supplies. They were experiencing crop failure. A lot of the places were really poor and were struggling. So Ruby comes back, and he has what we call the Rubi Report, or these are suggestions that he has. And he says that they need to close all missions in Texas except for the ones in San Antonio and Goliad. So all the East Texas missions, especially, would be closed. They wanted to move all settlers to East Texas from East Texas to San Antonio. So all the people that were spread out all over East Texas needed to be condensed, brought together, and brought into San Antonio, so they could hold them together. They could kind of bring all the troops together so they knew where everybody was, and it'd be easier to help them and defend them. They also wanted to make San Antonio the new capital of Texas, of Spanish Texas, and then they wanted to make friends with the Apache to help fight the Comanche. The Comanche Indians were raiding a whole bunch with the Spanish, and the Spanish were having a problem with them, so they thought, well, if we befriend the Apache, who's a rival to the Comanche, that they would help fight them, and that would help out with Indian relations and some of the problems they had in that area. Eventually, all the East Texans that move to San Antonio have some problems. They find that all the land that they like and all the land they want has already been taken by people who are already in San Antonio. That's different farming conditions. They don't feel like they've been treated fairly. All of them are farmers, and they feel that all the good farmland has been taken. So there's some resentment and some things that they don't like about being in San Antonio. So Gilly Barbo and his people were not happy there. So he asks permission to go back to East Texas. He's denied by the governor or by the government. They said that they would not do that. But in 1779, he says, you know what? We don't like it here. We're just going to pack up our stuff and go anyway, even though we don't have permission. So they go back to Gilly Barbo takes some people back to East Texas. They live there without the government's permission. They don't have a military force that protects them. They founded the town of Nacogdoches, which becomes a huge trading post and stopping post when people start traveling into Texas. They called it the gateway to Texas. People would stop there and resupply and do some things there. Sometimes they would trade with other countries that the Spanish did not want them to trade with. But the Spanish government didn't have very much control over Nacogdoches because they were kind of doing their own thing, and it was so far out they didn't want to mess with them. I kind of compare Nacogdoches to a stop, like if you're heading from Houston and you're going to San Antonio, you're heading west on I-10, and almost everybody stops at Buc-ee's. Like it's a place you stop and eat, or gas up, resupply sometimes. But it's just a place that people always stop. So when they call it the gateway of East Texas or the gateway of Texas, like anybody who's kind of coming through Texas almost always stopped in Nacogdoches. I kind of compare it to like the Buc-ee's of the time. The American Revolution in 1776, 13 colonies declare independence from Britain. They do that with the Declaration of Independence. They are tired of the British controlling them and taxing them without their permission. Spain and France actually side with the colonies against Great Britain. They say, if you guys need our help, we'll supply you and do all these things. Part of that is not because they believed in the cause, more because they wanted to get Great Britain out of North America and to make them a less wealthy country. So Great Britain is defeated by the United States, which is a huge shock to the world. The United States is born as a country, and now Spain now shares a border with the United States in since they've gotten their independence from freedom. Or I'm sorry, independence from Great Britain. Now, the French during this time actually have regained control of Louisiana, and the 13 colonies have this territory that's kind of over here. You can see on these maps it's marked here. France has this territory called Louisiana. They've gained it back. The Spanish actually gave it back to the French. Maybe not gave it back to them, but the French reacquired it from the Spanish. The Spanish said, just whatever you do, just don't sell it to the United States. But in 1803, Napoleon, who's the leader of France, is desperate for money because of some of the wars and things he's fighting, and what he does is exactly what the Spanish don't want him to do. He sells the Louisiana Purchase to the United States for $15 million, which is very cheap. It was like 3 or 4 cents an acre at the time, an acre being about the size of a football field. I think they said nowadays that would be about 43 cents an acre, which is a really good land deal for the United States. Now, you can see here, Spanish now share a border. Once they get the Louisiana Purchase, this is all part of the United States. The United States doubles in size overnight. And now U.S. settlers start moving into Spain and Spanish-owned Texas. And the Spanish are okay with that, but they are a little bit worried about U.S. continuing to grow in size. So that's something they're going to have to deal with in a little bit. The Spanish have bigger problems, though, besides the Louisiana Purchase. People in Mexico are fed up. They see what's happened in the United States. They were able to win their independence from a large global power, and the Mexicans see what's going on, and they say, hey, maybe we should do the same thing. So Father Miguel Hidalgo y Castilla felt that the people were being oppressed. They didn't have the same opportunities, and he calls for a fight against the Spanish. And he leads this uprising of Mexican people against the Spanish to become their own country. He recruits, or Gutierrez de Lara is a guy who agrees with him. Gutierrez de Lara begins to recruit people to fight against the Spanish. And one of those people that he found was Augustus McGee. He was an American commander, and he wanted to help the Mexicans fight the Spanish to gain Mexican independence. The Battle of Medina is not that well talked about, or there's not tons known about it. They're even not quite sure exactly where it took place. They have some ideas, but they're not 100% sure. But the Republican Army of the North, which was led by Gutierrez de Lara and Augustus McGee, a couple of the guys that Father Hidalgo had, recruited, led the army. The Spanish killed almost the whole army during fighting, and then there were a few captives that they take, and those captives were executed as well. The Spanish also came in and tracked down all the settlers in San Antonio that helped this army and killed them as well. So the effect this has on Texas is a lot of people are worried about, a lot of the settlers in Texas are worried that the Spanish are now just going to start killing everybody who they think has helped these armies. So Texas almost becomes deserted. A lot of people flee back to the United States or other countries, or just out of Texas, out of Spain, Spanish-held territory. And now Texas is largely unpopulated. So all these things that the Spanish have done to try and get people into Texas and to the area are now kind of all for nothing because everything's gone. Another interesting thing is during this battle, Santa Anna, who later becomes the bad guy, you could call him at the Alamo, the leader of the Mexicans during the Alamo, he's a part of the Spanish army, and he sees that by killing everyone and everything, the effect that it has and the fear that it creates in Texas. So that will come back into play when Texas tries to break away from Mexico in getting their independence. Eventually, the Spanish are forced out of Mexico. Mexico does win their independence, and they're able to become their own country. In 1821, Mexico becomes free from Spanish rule. So they are now setting up their own government and their own laws, and that's a good thing for them and also a bad thing. The reason it's a bad thing is they have a lot of people who have not done that before. So there's lots of confusion at the beginning. Yes, they're happy that they win independence from Spain, but they also now have a problem with, okay, what type of government are we going to have? How are we going to do that? Who's going to be our leaders? What's the structure going to be? So that ends up being a problem for them. So that is the end of chapter 7, what you'll need to know. I hope this was informative for you, and make sure you look over this, listen to this before we take our tests and quizzes. Have a good day.